Welcome everybody to a new Bytes of Innovation webinar. My name is Martin Willeming. I'm one of the co-founders at SecMed. And Bytes of Innovation provides a deep dive into the future of medicine. And we do this with renowned experts such as researchers, physicians, investors, and lawyers. We do it every other Thursday. So we'll have one now, we'll have one in 2 weeks, and so on. The concept is like this. The expert presents for about 15 minutes, and after the 15-minute presentation, there's going to be a Q&A, which is moderated by Aline Lutz, who is the medical director at SecMed, and by me. So to all the participants, make sure to put your questions in the chat so that we can discuss them during the Q&A phase of this webinar. Today, I'm proud to announce that we have Shelly Yehezkely amongst us, and Shelly received her undergraduate degree in biomedical engineering from Technion, the Israel Institution of Technology, and her master's degree in image processing from the Technical University in Delft in the Netherlands. After working at Polycom and Philips Healthcare, she joined Viz.ai as director of AI, and last month, she got promoted to vice president of artificial intelligence at Viz.ai. She has extensive experience in machine learning, deep learning, and NLP. And today she's going to talk about the medical AI lifecycle. Shelly, the floor is yours. Let me unshare my screen.
I'll share my screen and start.
Yes, we can see your screen now.
Great. Hi everyone, I'm Shelly Yehezkely, VP of AI at Viz, and I'm very excited to be here today and would like to thank Martin and Elaine for inviting me. In this episode of Bytes of Innovation, we will discuss the life cycle of medical AI products, including the unique challenges in the medical domain. This life cycle consists of various stages from data collection, data analysis, data annotation, algorithm design, training, tuning, testing, productization, deployment, and up to monitoring and feedback loops for continuous improvement. First, I want to say a few words about what we do at Viz. Our mission is to increase the access to life-saving treatments. Our first product was Viz LVO, large vessel occlusion, that detects clots in the brain. The goal of this tool is to reduce communication breakdowns by connecting multidisciplinary staff involved in the management of stroke patients. As you can see in the image, Viz LVO integrates seamlessly within the standard of care. The patients arrive to the hospital and get a CT scan. Then the CT images are automatically routed to Viz Cloud, processed by our AI algorithms, and the notification is sent to the relevant team in the hospital. This takes less than 3 minutes from the images until the notification is sent. Our intelligence care coordination platform alerts multidisciplinary care teams earlier in the workflow, coordinated care by connecting the frontline healthcare professionals to the specialist, and letting them communicate and have HIPAA-compliant checks in order to coordinate the triage and the treatment of this patient. Viz LVO has powered the stroke workflow, reducing door to treatment from more than 3 hours to less than 1 hour, as supported by multiple publications. So the domain we are dealing with, and most of the examples that I give today are from AI for medical images. I want to show you our current care pathways that we have created. These are formed from algorithms that we got FDA approval for, and then built a full product and workflow to make the algorithm effective and useful in a clinical setting. We started with Viz LVO, as can be seen here in the left-hand side, that detects occlusions in vessels in the brain. And you can see here a screenshot of our application. So the relevant team in the hospital gets a notification, and they have this DICOM viewer. They can look at the images and can decide on the next steps with these patients. Then we extended our portfolio of products with Viz ICH that detects bleeds in the brain. And recently we introduced 2 new products outside the domain of stroke, Viz Aortic that detects dissections in the aorta, and with pulmonary embolism that detects clots in the lungs. The life cycle of medical AI products is a continuous process that starts with data collection and go all the way through data annotation, algorithm development and testing, productization, deployment, post-market surveillance, and starting again as part of the continuous improvement. AI and machine learning algorithms require feedback and monitoring from the field, both for initial development and for ongoing improvement and the post-market surveillance. Let's start with data collection. The development of effective algorithms requires enormous amounts of data for training, testing, and validation. The data should cover demographic, clinical, and technical variability. This variability comes from diverse sites, diverse patient population, different levels of disease severity, and technical factors like image resolution, acquisition protocols, and modality vendors. Data can be acquired from clinical partners through research collaborations or data vendors like Segment. Some of the challenges include the low prevalence of specific disease, which makes it even more harder to find the relevant cases, and regulations related to patient health information. Once we have the data, we can continue with data annotation. Data annotation is the process in which the clinical experts are ground truthing the data and extracting all relevant information that is necessary for development and testing. This process is time-consuming and costly. Depending on the task, the clinical experts are asked to do can be pixel by pixel annotation if we need accurate segmentation. For example, we can see here an example of a brain bleed, and here in order to develop an algorithm that can actually provide segmentation and quantification of the bleeds, the annotation should be done pixel by pixel. This is a very tedious work, and it requires clinical expertise. If we are talking about a binary decision or detection problems, sometimes it's faster, like saying yes, no, or something in the image. If we are talking about a localization problem, like the example here that we are showing a midline shift, then the clinical experts need to put such lines in order to show where in the image we have the midline shift and measure it. So the tasks are varied, and in general, especially because it requires manual work of clinical experts, it's very costly. The next step is, of course, development of an algorithm. So we start with the design. State-of-the-art methods today are based on neural networks in which the model is built based on learning from examples. The architecture of the network is chosen based on the task in hand. We can see here in the right-hand side an example of a neural network architecture. Here, and we see here the different layers and combinations of the hyperparameters. In many times, we actually develop an algorithmic pipeline that consists of classical computer vision techniques together with deep learning components. Moreover, methods for data augmentation and weak supervision are desired, especially because of the challenges to acquire data and to annotate the data. We are trying to mitigate this by data augmentation and weak supervision. Next, we have the model training. In this phase, the model learns from examples. So a bit more technical explanation. This is the process of fitting the best combination of hyperparameters to a machine learning algorithm in order to minimize the loss function over the prediction range. The output is a trained model that can be used for prediction. One of the challenges here is the high variance of the data. You can see here at the example several slices of CT images of the brain of brain bleeds. And you, even without being clinical expert, we can all see that the bleed looks different in each of these images. It can be bright relative to the background. It can be darker relative to the background. The location is different. The sizes are different. The orientation of the brain is different. So there is a very high variability of the data, and that requires building a very robust model. Next, algorithm testing. So of course, the most basic and always needed is the performance evaluation. These are standalone tests that measure the performance of the algorithm. The sample size, the validation study, and the evaluation metrics are chosen per use case. For existing algorithms, we also need to do regression tests in order to make sure that the performance was not deteriorated when we introduced a new version. So it actually comparison of the results between the new version and the previous one. All the tests are done using independent test set that was not used as part of the development process. And ideally, it should come from different sources. We always strive for automation as much as possible. Next, in the testing, before we can submit an algorithm for regulatory approval, for example, for FDA submission, we need to do additional tests. The validation study and the study design is determined by the regulatory pathway that we choose and the indications of use and the claims. So it really, it does not depend only on what the algorithm is doing, but it is mainly influenced by the indications for use and the regulatory pathway, and I'll give an example. For example, if we are talking about CAD-T devices like these LVOs that I mentioned before, which is used for triage, it detects clots in the brain. The FDA validation study consists of a standalone performance study with multiple readers. The primary endpoints are sensitivity and specificity because it's a detection algorithm. For a diagnosis device, the FDA validation study will include a reader study with comparison of the performance of the physicians with and without the AI. So it's different. When the algorithm is approved, so when we get the FDA clearance or the MDR if we are dealing with Europe, it's integrated to the product. The product is the whole system that allows for the user to get great value out of it. Building a product is a collaborative work between many teams, such as product managers, UI, UX experts, developers, researchers, DevOps, and more. The tests for the products are validation and verification. So here we actually test and confirm that the product does what it is expected to do according to the indications of use. When all this is ready, you can deploy the algorithm or deploy the product in production. The deployment is actually the installation and the delivery of the product to the customers. For a cloud-based software as a medical device, this can be done remotely and frequently. For example, in Viz, we are cloud-based and it's a software as a medical device. We deploy a new version, not always with changes to the AI, it can be changes to other parts of the product. We are doing it every week to the entire install base. We are talking about close to 1,000 hospitals. And when the algorithm is already in production, we need to collect feedback and monitor its performance. So after it was developed, tested, approved, and deployed, the regulators and good machine learning practices require an ongoing process for monitoring algorithm performance in the real world. This is different from the tests that we did with the data in our lab. Monitoring is the continuous process of gathering feedback during operation in order to determine if the deployed algorithm is performing as expected. Why is it needed? Because the input data to the algorithm is changing constantly. It can be because of new imaging equipment or technique, or the presence of new diseases, for example, and many other factors. The monitoring is done by comparing the algorithm result to the ground truth that is done by medical experts. Both feedback and monitoring are achieved without burdening the physicians using our system. So this is done by the vendor who provided the product, in this example, clinical experts from this, and not by asking the physicians or the users to provide us feedback or click on additional buttons in order to give this feedback and be part of the monitoring. We are trying to keep it isolated without burdening anyone. This is dedicated to consistently evaluating our own performance in order to bring the best possible experience to our customers and their patients. Here I'm showing an example for performance assessment in real world. It was done by measuring the performance of Viz LVO in 139 hospitals in the US with data from 2,544 patients. The data annotation was done consecutively and showed very good results of sensitivity and specificity, 96 and 94% respectively. These results and other monitoring activities are supported in publications. On average, every 34 seconds, a patient scan is being processed by Viz. So since we started this talk, already a lot of patients the data were processed by our system, and it gives us a lot of data that needs to be processed. These feedback loops, which are needed for continuous improvement, require an AI infrastructure that supports data collection, ground truthing and data curation, algorithm improvement, algorithm testing, and fast deployment cycles. This enables iterative development and quality improvement of new and existing algorithms and taking the needed actions if a deviance is detected. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. And back to you, Martin, Aline, for the questions.
Thank you, Shelly. This is a very interesting presentation. And yes, we do have a lot of questions. So I'm going to start with the first one. So if I understand correctly, your product is one product, and then you'll have multiple modules. For instance, LVO is one module within the same product, or are they different products?
So we have one platform, and on this platform, we have multiple products.
Okay. And are your customers mostly hospitals, as you said? And what sizes are these hospitals, and what are they located? Where have you deployed your product already?
So we deployed the product in more than 900 hospitals in the US, different sizes of hospitals and across the entire country. And we are now starting deployments also in Europe.
In Europe. Wow, interesting. Congratulations. I have another question. How do you monitor the results? As you said, that the last step is monitoring in real world settings. So how do you sample the cases? Do you have a clinician while performing this evaluation? How does it work?
Yeah, so we have clinical AI experts within this, and we of course sample the data. We cannot. We are talking here about thousands of cases being processed by this during the month. Usually we are doing it constantly. We all the time have people working on this type of consecutive annotations. It can, and we decide from time to time whether we want to focus on specific sites with a longer duration of time and measure the performance there, or we want to look at all sites or many sites, but at a shorter duration. The clinical specialists are annotating the data and actually creating ground truth. We compare the results of the algorithm to this ground truth, and then we create reports with the performance, and we have clear thresholds of performance that we need to meet. Usually we derive those from what we submitted to the FDA. We are talking, all these devices are cleared by the FDA. And we always meet the criteria of the FDA. We are well above. The purpose here is to make our product even better in order to delight the customers. If we identify any deviation, for example, if one site has the performance is poorer compared to other sites, or in some locations we see that it used to be better in the previous month, we investigate it. We have a whole process for error analysis. It's a joint work between the algorithm developers and the clinical specialists. And based on our findings, we decide on the action plan. Sometimes it can be guiding the customers to change something in the protocols that they send to Viz. Sometimes we are doing improvements in the algorithm and deploy the improved version. Of course, after it moved in the entire process of improvement and testing and deployment. Most of the times, the performance keeps being high, and we don't need to release new versions.
I see. So yeah, there's that's quite a structure in place to do all this monitoring.
Yeah.
Martin, would you like to make the next question?
Yeah, definitely. So Shelly, thanks a lot. This is a great presentation. It's nice to see the whole overview, like the whole life cycle, starting with the gathering the data all the way to post-market market evaluation. So that was really great. We have some questions in the chat. I think the question from Bernardo Pereira, you already answered about the strategies in place to deal with data model drift. You just talked about that, but I think Philippe Mollier actually has a question. Does the retraining or lagging improvements require FDA reapproval? So once, there is some issue post-market, do you need to reapply for FDA approval?
Yeah, so it depends on the change that we apply. If it's a small change, we of course document it and we have a letter to file to the FDA. If we are talking about more major changes, then a resubmission is needed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Let's see. M. de Groot is saying, excellent talk, thank you. Do you have a mechanism for sites to provide reports to Viz AI on incorrect model inference diagnosis? So what if, one of your customers sees like, hey, something is off here. Do you have mechanisms for that?
Yeah, so of course we have the entire support and escalation process, and customers can report on problems or ask questions if something is not clear. It is go to our support team, and then from there routed to the relevant team within Viz. If it's related to algorithms, it comes to the AI team, and we deal with it and handle this feedback. If your question was whether we have an automated process for receiving such feedback, so they can actually open this ticket or support case automatically, and we handle it. So it's quite convenient. But there are no buttons within the application or something that they can just send feedback and we can collect it and do some online training. This is something that we are not doing. We are dealing here with locked models.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So Viz AI is mostly focusing on vascular diseases, right? There's LVO, there's intracranial hemorrhage, there's pulmonary embolism, all these things. What's the reasoning behind this that you guys are going after the vascular diseases first? And after that, are you planning to extend into other fields as well?
Yeah, so we started with a stroke where time criticality is very important, and there was room for improvement of the workflow within the hospital. Then we extended to other products still in the domain of neurovascular. We expanded our portfolio to, as you said, to pulmonary embolism and vascular in general, chest and abdominal. And we are now actually expanding to new domain beyond vascular and neurovascular. And so in work, we have new domains. And usually we are looking at clinical questions where there is room for improvement of the workflow within the hospital. So it's very important for us that the algorithm will bring value, will integrate seamlessly within the hospital workflow in parallel to the standard of care. But it's not, the portfolio today is neurovascular and vascular and started because of the time criticality, and now we are expanding beyond that.
Got it. Yeah, that totally makes sense. You have to start somewhere, of course. So it's good to start at like a high priority, high gain part of AI indeed. So you're talking about seamless integration with the local system. So it is a cloud-based product. Do your customers need cloud-based PACS systems, or what do they need to do the physicians actually need to upload the images to your platform, or how does that work?
No, it is sent automatically from the scanner to the cloud. It is being processed there, and then the results are sent back to PACS or notification in the mobile device. Got it.
That's really awesome. So one last question before we round it up. So you talked about, there are multiple phases in the life cycle. One of them was to get access to data, and how do you get access to data? And what do you recommend people that have an idea that want to do something with AI? How can they get access to data?
Yeah. So first we have our data coming from production, and depending on the contract with the site, we can use it for multiple purposes. It depends on what is specified there. Then there are clinical collaborations with clinical partners. So it's actually signing a research agreement, passing all the IRB approvals and everything which is needed, and then we can receive data through this process. And also acquiring data from vendors that from which it is possible to acquire data.
Got it.
So my recommendation is to use all sources possible. So if I know that most companies do not have the production data sets that we have because we are already installed in a lot of sites. So the combination of clinical partners with vendors for data, I think this is the ideal model.
Yeah, got it. That makes sense. So thanks again, Shelly, for a really great presentation. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for answering the questions. I think we had a nice discussion afterwards. One last question, where can people find more about you or about VizAI?
VizAI, our website.
Okay, just go to the website, people.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here today.